Hey there, weary wanderers of the night. Picture a single match struck in the dark, its frail glow trembling against the weight of a world at war, casting shadows that whisper of secrets and sacrifice in occupied France. As you settle into the quiet of your night, let this story be your refuge, a bridge between history's edge and the calm you seek. If these tales of courage cloaked in shadow speak to your soul, please like and subscribe. It helps keep these stories flickering. In the comments, share where you're watching from and the hour glowing on your clock. So, turn on a fan, dim the lights, and sink into your pillows. It's 1941, and you're a British spy, trained by Churchill's secretive special operations executive, stepping into a land where every glance could betray you, yet every moment hums with purpose. As the day's burdens fade, breathe deeply, and let this tale guide you into a gentle drift towards sleep. You step onto the fog-shrouded streets of London, where the air hangs heavy with the residue of last night's blitz, a metallic tang that clings to your coat like an unwelcome memory. The year is 1941, and the city pulses with a weary resilience, sirens echoing faintly in the distance, reminding you of nights spent huddled in shelters, the ground trembling as if the earth itself recoiled from the skies. Yet today, your path diverges from the familiar routine of ration queues and blackout curtains. A cryptic letter, slipped under your door like a thief in the twilight, summons you to an address near Baker Street, a nondescript building that blends into the row of soot-stained facades, its windows veiled in grime, as though guarding secrets from the prying eyes of passers-by. As you climb the creaking stairs, each step feels like a quiet surrender to an unknown current, pulling you away from the predictable drudgery of ledgers and typewriters that once defined your days. Inside, the office unfolds as a chamber of muted shadows, where dust motes dance lazily in the slivers of light, piercing through half-drawn blinds. The walls, lined with faded maps and yellowed files, seem to exhale the musty breath of forgotten campaigns, while a single bulb dangles overhead, casting elongated silhouettes that twist like unresolved questions. At the desk sits a man whose face bears the etchings of too many unspoken burdens, lines carved deep around eyes that hold the glint of tempered steel, his vest rumpled as if sleep were a luxury long forsaken. He gestures for you to sit, and as you do, the chair groans under your weight, mirroring the subtle unease settling in your chest. Smoke curls from his cigarette, a serpentine veil that blurs the space between you, infusing the room with an acrid haze that seeps into your pores, a prelude to the veiled truths about to unfold. He begins not with formalities, but with probes that slice through the ordinary, each question a thread unraveling the fabric of your composure. "Do you lie well?" he asks, his voice a low rumble, like gravel shifting underfoot in a forgotten alley. You hesitate, sensing the weight behind the words, as if admitting skill in deception might forever alter the mirror you face each morning. "Can you endure solitude?" he continues, "not as a companion, but as a sentinel that watches your every thought." These inquiries drift like smoke rings, circling your mind, evoking memories of lonely evenings amid the blackout, where the radio static offered scant comfort against the encroaching void. Yet beneath the surface lies a wry acknowledgement. In a world where truth bends under the boot of tyranny, perhaps fabrication is the truest armor one can forge. As the conversation deepens, he leans forward, the cigarette's ember glowing like a distant flare in the gloom. "We're assembling shadows," he murmurs. "Individuals who don't march in formation but dissolve into the backdrop, sowing chaos where order reigns. He speaks of the Special Operations Executive, born in the crucible of 1940 under Churchill's decree to set Europe ablaze, a clandestine force of civilians turned saboteurs, dispatched to fracture the Nazi grip from within. Drawing on real histories of linguists and adventurers plucked from obscurity, he paints a picture of an organization that thrives on ingenuity over infantry, where a well-placed whisper can topple empires more effectively than battalions. But woven into his narrative is the unvarnished peril. Agents vanishing into Gestapo cells, their fates sealed by a single slip. The odds, he adds with a faint, ironic twist of his lips, are generously 50-50, survival or silence, depending on how fate flips the coin. In that moment, a dark amusement flickers in your thoughts, as if the absurdity of gambling your existence on such whims underscores the fragile lottery of life itself, especially now, when bombs fall indiscriminately and tomorrow feels like a borrowed promise. You reflect on the contrast to your former existence, where risks were confined to misfiled documents or delayed trains, a mundane rhythm now revealed as a fragile illusion in the face of global fracture. Here, in this dim sanctum, the man extends an invitation not to glory, but to a veiled dance with destiny, where anonymity becomes your cloak and cunning your creed. The Special Operations Executive, he explains, recruits from the unlikeliest corners, teachers, artists, clerks like yourself, transforming them into instruments of subtle warfare, as evidenced by early operatives who infiltrated France with forged identities and explosive ingenuity. Yet the subtext lingers. In embracing this path, you honor the quiet fortitude of those who endure, a timeless echo that resonates even in safer eras, where knowledge of such sacrifices fosters gratitude for the untroubled breaths we take. As questions cascade about your fluency in French, your tolerance for ambiguity, he sketches the broader canvas. Churchill's vision of ungentlemanly warfare, a phrase laced with defiant wit, challenging the chivalric norms of combat in favor of guerrilla tactics that mirror the enemy's ruthlessness. Founded amid the desperation following Dunkirk, the SOE aimed to ignite resistance across occupied lands, supplying partisans with arms and expertise. Its agents, often civilians, thrust into the fray without the buffer of uniforms. You sense the irony. While armies clash in open fields, your role would be the unseen hand, tilting scales through sabotage and subterfuge. A subtle melancholy seeps in, the realization that survival hinges not on brute force, but on the art of evasion, a lesson in humility that transcends epochs, reminding modern souls of the precarious balance between control and chaos. The interview pivots to personal stakes, his gaze piercing as he queries your resolve against isolation's gnaw. Many crack under the weight of their echoes, he notes, a glint in his eye, as if acknowledging the cruel jest of sending souls into voids where companionship is a liability. You ponder the historical precedents. Agents like those in the early F section, French speakers culled from émigré communities, their missions shrouded in secrecy that often led to solitary ends. Yet in this exchange, a quiet camaraderie emerges, his words a bridge across the desk, forging a bond born of shared peril. The smoke thickens, blurring boundaries, much like the moral ambiguities awaiting in shadowed alleys abroad. Finally, as the session wanes, he slides a document across the scarred wood, its ink stark against the parchment. "Sign if you're ready to vanish," he says, the words hanging like a spectre. Your hand hovers, the pen's tip a point of no return. evoking the fates of real recruits who stepped into anonymity, their legacies etched in classified files. In that suspended breath, a wry observation surfaces. How peculiar that one's greatest act of defiance begins with a signature, a mundane stroke amid the extraordinary. You press down, the scratch of nib on paper resounding like a distant thunderclap, sealing your entry into a realm where shadows hold sway, and the line between hero and ghost thins to a whisper. The room seems to exhale, the haze parting slightly, as if the decision itself clears a path through the uncertainty, leaving you poised on the precipice of transformation. Yet as you rise to leave, the knowledge that this choice echoes through time is a testament to human tenacity in the face of tyranny. In quieter ages, such stories serve as mirrors, reflecting our hidden strengths, urging appreciation for the freedoms forged in forgotten struggles. The door clicks shut behind you, the street's fog enveloping once more. But now it feels less like obscurity and more like a veil to be pierced, a prelude to the deeper darkness ahead. The train rattles northward, slicing through England's patchwork fields like a reluctant blade through fog-draped silk, each jolt a reminder that the familiar contours of your life are receding into irrelevance. London fades behind you, its bomb-scarred skyline swallowed by the horizon, and with it the mundane anchors that once tethered your days. Tea breaks amid office chatter, evenings lost to newspapers heralding distant fronts. Now, as the landscape shifts to rugged hills and mist-shrouded moors, a quiet inevitability settles over you, like the first drops of rain heralding a storm that has long been brewing. The compartment is sparse, shared with strangers whose eyes avoid yours, their silence a tacit agreement to let secrets lie dormant. You clutch the ticket stub, its edges frayed as if echoing the unraveling threads of normalcy, and ponder how swiftly one signature can reroute a destiny, transforming a clerk into a spectre poised for erasure. Scotland unfolds in relentless grey, the tracks curving toward Ariseg, a name whispered in your briefing like a cipher for transformation. The journey drags, hours bleeding into one another under skies that weep without pause, rain streaking the windows in rivulets that mimic the uncertain paths ahead. You disembark at a forgotten station, where the platform stands desolate, wind whipping salt-tinged air from the nearby sea, carrying whispers of isolation that cling to your skin like unseen webs. A lorry awaits, its engine coughing protests against the chill, driven by a taciturn figure who nods without words, as if speech might shatter the fragile veil of secrecy. The road winds upward, through glens where ancient stones brood like silent guardians, their weathered faces etched with tales of endurance that mirror the resilience demanded of you now. In this remote cradle, far from the clamour of battle lines, lies the cradle of your rebirth, a training ground where survival is distilled into art, a place where the Special Operations Executive moulds ordinary souls into instruments of subtle defiance. The estate emerges from the mist like a phantom manor, its turrets piercing low clouds, ground sodden under perpetual downpour that turns earth to a quagmire of mud and resolve. Ariseg House, or STS-21, as it's coded in hushed dispatches, sprawls across wild terrain, its isolation a deliberate fortress against prying eyes, ensuring that the arts taught here remain veiled from the world. You step from the vehicle, boots sinking into the mire, the sensation akin to being claimed by the land itself, a baptism in discomfort that foreshadows the trials to come. Other recruits mill about, their faces a mosaic of determination and doubt. Linguists from Parisian cafes, mechanics from Manchester workshops, all drawn into this web by the same inexorable pull. A wry thought flickers. How ironic that in a war of vast armies, victory might hinge on these scattered few, learning to vanish rather than stand tall. Their efforts a quiet counterpoint to the thunder of tanks. Your guide, a wiry sergeant with scars that map forgotten skirmishes, leads you through dripping archways into a hall where fire crackles defiantly against the damp. "Welcome to the School of Unmaking," he says, his tone laced with a mordant edge, as if acknowledging the absurdity of teaching men to become ghosts in a world that devours the living. Here, the curriculum unfolds not in classrooms of chalk and rote, but in fields where rain blurs the line between endurance and folly. The Special Operations Executives Regimen, honed since its inception in 1940, spans weeks of layered instruction, beginning with the foundation of identity, crafting selves that dissolve under scrutiny. You gather with the group, breaths mingling in the chill air, and receive your first assignment, a dossier of falsehoods, a fabricated life stitched from half-truths and invention. The process begins with clothing, not the crisp uniforms of parade grounds, but garments worn thin by design, trousers patched like forgotten promises, shirts faded to the hue of overcast skies, evoking the weary garb of French labourers under occupation. You slip into them, the fabric rough against skin accustomed to starched collars, a tactile reminder that authenticity lies in the details of decay. Feel the weight of another man's hardships, the instructor intones, his voice a gravelly murmur that carries the echo of lost comrades. These outfits, sourced from refugees and tailored for verisimilitude, carry faint scents of tobacco and earth, as if infused with the ghosts of those who fled Vichy's grasp. Linking this to broader strokes, you learn how SOE agents, often bilingual civilians, were dispatched to bolster resistance networks, their disguises a first line against the ever-watchful milice or Gestapo patrols. Next comes the paperwork, fragile shields of ink and pulp that could unravel everything if flawed. Forged identity cards, ration books, and travel permits are laid before you, each bearing a name not your own. Perhaps Henri Duval, an itinerant mechanic from Lyon. His backstory a tapestry of invented sorrows. A wife lost to illness. A workshop shuttered by requisitions. You memorize it under lamplight that flickers like uncertain loyalties, repeating details until they seep into your marrow, supplanting your true self. The instructor, a former forger with fingers stained perpetually by dyes, demonstrates the art of replication. Subtle watermarks, aged edges achieved through tea stains and careful abrasion. One smudge, he quips with a bitter twist, and you're not Henri anymore, you're a memory. In this exercise, a subtle irony emerges in your reflections. How survival in those shadowed years demanded the erasure of self. This sacrifice echoes in modern freedoms, where identity is a given rather than a gamble. As days blend under the relentless drizzle, interactions with locals, role-playing staff posing as suspicious villagers, hone your poise. You practice banal exchanges at a mock cafe, ordering ersatz coffee with a Gallic shrug, your accent drilled to mask English inflections. One slip, a too crisp consonant, draws mock arrests, underscoring the razor-thin margin between blending and betrayal. The humour in desperation surfaces quietly. You chuckle inwardly at the farce of rehearsing normalcy in a place so far removed from it, where rain erodes resolve much like doubt, gnaws at the spirit. Historically, these simulations drew from real accounts of agents like those in the French section, who infiltrated with such precision that some lived undetected for months, fostering Maquis groups amid the rural undercurrents of resistance. Building trust becomes the undercurrent, not just with facsimiles but within yourself. Evenings find you poring over maps of Normandy or the Loire, tracing routes that might one day mean evasion or entrapment. The estate's isolation amplifies this, wines howling like omens through the eaves, prompting thoughts on the solitude awaiting days without allies, where a farmer's nod could spell salvation or doom. Yet in this crucible, a profound respect emerges for the unyielding human capacity to adapt, a trait that bridges eras, reminding us how past fortitudes underpin present securities. The regiment's rhythm instills a fatalistic calm, each lesson a stitch in the armour of anonymity. You forge bonds with fellow trainees over shared discomforts, soggy boots, sparse meals, conversations laced with gallows wit, like joking about the elegance of vanishing without a trace. Better to be a rumour than a headline, one mutters, his laugh hollow yet affirming. Drawing from the operation's 5-week syllabus, which encompassed everything from cryptography to close-quarters combat, these initial days focus on the intangible, cultivating the mindset of the unseen operative, where patience outwits power. As twilight deepens over the moors, you stand at a window, rain patterning the glass like encrypted messages, contemplating the path's inexorability. The training ground, with its muddied fields and shrouded halls, serves as a microcosm of the larger struggle, a place where ordinary individuals are recast into legends unspoken, their contributions etched not in stone, but in the subtle shifts of history's tide. In quieter reflections, a gentle melancholy arises, gratitude for the unscarred nights of today, born from the veiled vigils of yesteryear, where every forged signature was a defiant breath against oblivion. Dawn breaks over the mist-veiled estate like a reluctant confession, its pale light filtering through rain-lashed windows to illuminate a workshop where invention dances on the edge of destruction. You enter this chamber of curiosities, the air thick with the metallic bite of oil and the faint, acrid whiff of chemicals that linger like unspoken regrets. Wooden benches groan under the weight of peculiar artifacts, each one a testament to human ingenuity twisted toward subversion, crafted in hidden laboratories where scientists like Charles Fraser Smith, the real-life wizard behind SOE's Q branch, conjured gadgets from everyday illusions. Here, in this secluded forge, the tools of sabotage await, not as blunt instruments of force, but as subtle extensions of the mind, whispering promises of disruption in a war where overt might often falters. The instructor, a compact figure with eyes sharpened by years of clandestine craft, beckons you closer, his hands moving with deliberate grace over a lump of doughy substance that yields like forgotten clay. Plastic explosive, he intones, his voice a murmur that cuts through the damp hush, malleable as doubt, yet unyielding in its fury. You knead it under his guidance, feeling its cool, pliant form resist and conform, a metaphor for the adaptability demanded of you, shaping chaos from the ordinary, much as agents in the field molded it into charges that crippled supply lines without fanfare. Derived from wartime necessity, this innovation from British chemists allowed operatives to conceal devastation in innocuous packages, slipping past checkpoints where heavier ordnance would betray. As you press it into molds, a quiet irony surfaces in your mind, how something so soft could harbor such explosive potential, mirroring the deceptive calm you must cultivate amid turmoil. Practice ensues in a sodden field beyond the manor, where mud clings to your soles like accumulated burdens, and the instructor demonstrates embedding the material in a mock railway tie. Time it precisely, he advises, attaching a pencil-thin detonator, a time pencil, its acid vial corroding a wire at a predictable rate, born from the urgent labs of 1940, where delay mechanisms evolved from crude fuses to these elegant harbingers of ruin. You fumble the first attempt, the device sputtering harmlessly, its failure a gentle rebuke that evokes a fleeting bitter amusement. In a realm where seconds dictate survival, even precision tools mock human haste. Historically, these pencils enabled synchronized strikes. Like those disrupting German reinforcements, their reliability forged through trial in shadowed workshops, underscoring the era's blend of desperation and brilliance, a legacy that invites reflection on how contemporary innovations, born of peace, owe debts to such fraught origins. Shifting indoors as rain intensifies, the session turns to more whimsical yet lethal contrivances. The instructor unveiling a collection of rat carcasses, their hollowed forms stuffed with explosive payloads. Nature's saboteur, he quips with a wry curl of his lip, explaining how these were designed to be tossed into enemy boilers, igniting upon incineration and wreaking havoc on industrial hearts. You handle one gingerly, its fur matted and eyes glassy, a macabre puppet in the theatre of war, inspired by Fraser Smith's penchant for disguising peril in the mundane. The concept, tested in early SOE trials, aimed at psychological erosion as much as physical damage, planting seeds of paranoia in factories where vermin became vectors of vengeance. As you assemble a similar device, threading wires through fragile frames, a subdued melancholy washes over you. The absurdity of weaponizing the overlooked, a poignant nod to how conflict elevates the trivial to tragic significance, echoing in modern times where subtlety often trumps spectacle in resolving disputes. The mood darkens further with the introduction of the L-pill, a cyanide capsule encased in rubber, its innocuous appearance belying the finality it promises. Your last resort, the instructor states matter-of-factly, his tone laced with an undercurrent of somber irony, as if acknowledging the cruel jest of offering death as a mercy in captivity. You roll it between fingers, feeling its slight weight, a condensed abyss that agents carried concealed in teeth or buttons, a safeguard against torture's unraveling grasp, rooted in the grim realities of 1941, when captured operatives faced Gestapo interrogations that broke even the steadfast. This pill embodied the ultimate act of control, a silent defiance drawn from historical precedents where spies chose oblivion over betrayal. In your quiet contemplation, a thread of dark humor emerges. How fitting that salvation comes packaged so humbly, a reminder that in desperation's grip, the smallest choices bear the heaviest echoes, fostering appreciation for eras where such dire options remain relics of the past. Afternoon drills escalate to hand-to-hand techniques. The instructor, his frame lean from campaigns unspoken, demonstrating silent takedowns in a dimly lit barn where hay muffles falls like suppressed truths. Approach a shadow, he whispers, guiding your arm in a fluid arc to simulate a neck snap, the motion eerily graceful, honed by experts like Fairbairn and Sykes, whose methods infused SOE curricula with lethal efficiency. You practice on dummies, the thud of impact resonating through your bones, each strike a confrontation with the intimacy of violence, a far cry from distant bombardments, yet laden with the same inexorable fate. Failure's sting, a missed grip, a hesitated pull, evoking wry self-reproach in the realization that hesitation is the true adversary. A lesson etched in the annals of agents who survived by embracing the merciless. This training, part of SOE's comprehensive syllabus, prepared civilians for the visceral realities of occupied zones. Where a sentry's whisper could unravel networks, evenings dissolve into cryptographic sessions, where you hunch over flickering candles, encoding messages with one-time pads that render words into inscrutable strings, a veil of numbers shielding intents from interception. The instructor paces, his shadow elongating like elongated doubts, stressing the radio's dual role as lifeline and liability, transmissions that summoned supplies but invited triangulation by enemy vans, drawing from real operations where wireless sets like the Type 3 Mark II sustained resistance but doomed many through detection. You encode practice dispatches, fingers cramping in the chill, a physical echo of the mental strain awaiting. Amid the tedium, a subtle sarcasm arises. How words, once bridges of connection, now twist into codes that isolate, a poignant parallel to how conflict warps communication, inviting gratitude for unencrypted dialogues in calmer times. As nights deepen, reflections pool like rainwater in hollows, the estate's isolation amplifying the gravity of these arts, tools not for conquest, but for erosion, chipping at empires from the fringes. You sense the deterministic weave, each gadget a thread in history's tapestry, woven by hands that balanced innovation with impermanence, their legacy a quiet valor that underpins freer horizons. The rain persists, a ceaseless drum that lulls yet unsettles, mirroring the internal rhythm of anticipation and apprehension, where mastery emerges not from triumph, but from the patient accrual of shadows. Fatigue sets in as drills blur, your body aching from repetitions that forge muscle memory into instinct, a transformation subtle yet profound. The instructor's tales, shared over sparse suppers, recount prototypes tested in haste. Bombs disguised as coal, pens that spat acid. Each iteration a step toward efficacy, born from the Special Operations Executive's urgent labs where necessity mothered monstrosities. You absorb these, the knowledge settling like sediment, enriching the soil of your resolve. In fleeting pauses, a melancholic empathy stirs for those who wielded them first, their fears veiled in stoicism, a bridge to present comforts where such ingenuity serves peace rather than peril. The culmination arrives in a mock sabotage, wiring a derelict shed with charges under simulated pressure, the timer ticking like fate's inexorable pulse. Success brings no elation, only a hollow satisfaction, tempered by the awareness that real stakes eclipse rehearsals. This phase, integral to SOE's evolution from ad hoc outfit to precision force, equips you with arsenals invisible, honoring the unsung architects whose creations tilted scales without a claim. As you retire to barracks, the night's hush envelops, a canvas for contemplating how these relics of ingenuity illuminate human endurance, evoking quiet reverence for histories that safeguard the now. Twilight drapes the airfield like a shroud woven from fading hopes, its edges fraying into the encroaching void where stars prick the canvas overhead, indifferent witnesses to the fragile ventures below. RAF Tangmere sprawls under this canopy, a hive of subdued activity where hangars loom like ancient tombs, their doors ajar to reveal the skeletal frames of aircraft poised for nocturnal errands. You arrive under the cover of dusk, the gravel crunching beneath your tires like brittle bones, a sound that resonates with the inexorable grind of circumstances drawing you onward. The base, nestled in Sussex's flatlands, pulses with a restrained urgency, ground crew murmuring in low tones, their lanterns casting elongated phantoms that dance across fuselages painted in midnight hues. Here, in this liminal space between safety and the abyss, the Westland Lysander awaits, its stubby wings and high-set cockpit evoking a bird of ill omen, designed not for dogfights, but for stealthy insertions into enemy realms. You approach the machine, its propeller still, a silent sentinel amid the hum of preparation, and climb the ladder with hands that betray a subtle tremor, fingers grazing cold metal that absorbs the chill of impending separation. The cockpit envelops you like a coffin tailored for the living, narrow confines pressing against your sides, the scent of aviation fuel mingling with leather and oil to form an intoxicating brew of anticipation and dread. Strapped in, you glance at the pilot, a laconic figure whose face, half obscured by goggles, offers no reassurance. His silence packed with the night. He nods once, a gesture sparse as rationed bread, and the engine coughs to life, its roar building to a steady thrum that vibrates through your frame, echoing the unrest in your core. As the Lysander taxis, bumping over uneven turf, you reflect on the aircraft's peculiar grace. Built for short takeoffs and landings on improvised strips, it has ferried over 400 agents into occupied Europe since 1941. Each flight a gamble against radar sweeps and flak batteries, where moonlight serves as both guide and betrayer. The runway blurs beneath you, and liftoff comes with a lurch that severs ties to solid ground, propelling you into an inky expanse, where the English countryside recedes like a dream dissolving at dawn. Climbing low to evade detection, the plane skims treetops and hedgerows, the rush of air whistling through seams like spectral laments. Below, blackout-enforced villages flicker as mere suggestions of life, their inhabitants oblivious to the solitary cargo hurtling overhead. A wry notion surfaces amid the turbulence. How this taxi of spies, as operatives dubbed it, charges fares in lives rather than coins, delivering passengers to destinations where return tickets are rarities. Historically, these missions hinged on lunar phases, full moons illuminating drop zones while heightening risks, as German night fighters prowled the silvered skies. Many Lysanders never returned, their crews claimed by mechanical whims or enemy fire, a testament to the era's blend of daring and disposability. As altitude stabilizes, the channel's dark expanse unfolds, a vast mirror reflecting starlight in fractured glimmers, its waves whispering secrets of submerged perils, mines and U-boats lurking like submerged doubts. You clutch the valley radio strapped beside you, its bulk a constant companion. 20 kilograms of encrypted salvation that will bridge you to London once landed. Inner thoughts drift to kin left behind, their faces blurring in memory's haze. A sibling's laughter echoing from pre-war gatherings. A parent's worried glance at departure, now distant as the receding shore. The isolation amplifies, the cockpit a capsule adrift in infinity, where time stretches like taut wire, each minute a meditation on vulnerability. Yet in this suspended solitude, a subtle irony emerges. How flight, symbol of freedom, here chains you to a trajectory of concealment, a path where visibility spells doom, echoing modern liberties where anonymity safeguards rather than endangers. The pilot banks slightly, navigating by celestial cues and dead reckoning, his instruments glowing faintly like embers in a dying hearth. You peer through the canopy, the French coast materializing as a jagged silhouette against the horizon, its cliffs standing sentinel over beaches scarred by invasion fears. Crossing the water feels like traversing a threshold into myth, where the occupied land below pulses with hidden rhythms. Partisans in cellars, collaborators in chateaux, all threads in a web of allegiance and treachery. The Lysander's operations, often launched from Tangmir's moonlit strips, embodied this duality. Swift descents onto fields marked by flickering torches, insertions that demanded precision amid chaos, with agents like those in the early waves facing immediate perils upon touchdown. A quiet melancholy seeps in, the realization that such voyages forged chains of resistance, their quiet audacity paving paths to liberation, a heritage that invites contemplation of how past perils underpin present pieces. Turbulence jostles the craft, a reminder of the machine's fragility, wings straining against gusts, engine laboring like a heart under duress. You brace, palms slick despite the cold, pondering the statistics whispered in briefings. High crash rates from overloaded landings or navigational slips, crews vanishing into the channel's embrace without a trace. The humor in such odds flickers dimly. A taxi ride from hell, where the meter runs on adrenaline and the destination charges entry in uncertainty. Yet this flight, part of a broader tapestry woven since the SOE's formation, highlights human tenacity. Pilots like those in 161 Squadron risking all for fleeting drop-offs, their anonymity a shield against glory's glare. As land draws near, the moon bathes the landscape in ethereal silver, illuminating pastures that conceal allies or ambushes, a luminous betrayal that heightens the pulse. Descent begins abruptly, the pilot throttling back, the Lysander gliding earthward like a fallen leaf caught in fate's draft. You spot the signal, 3 torches arranged in an L, faint beacons in the gloom, lit by Maquis hands that tremble with their stakes. The wheels kiss the grass with a thud, bouncing over uneven sod, the plane shuddering to a halt amid whispers of wind through stalks. The canopy slides open, night air rushing in crisp and laden with Earth's musk, carrying hints of distant sea and impending rain. You unstrap swiftly, hoisting the valley over the side, its weight an anchor to purpose amid disorientation. The pilot revs the engine without farewell, a tacit nod his only parting, and the aircraft surges forward, lifting into obscurity, leaving you stranded in silence that presses like a physical force. The field envelops you, grasses swaying in conspiratorial hush, the torches extinguished one by one, plunging the world into profound dark where your breaths seem amplified, each inhale a declaration of arrival. You crouch, senses attuned to every snap of twig or distant bark, the valley's straps digging into your shoulder like insistent reminders of isolation. This moment, replicated in countless insertions, marked the true commencement, agents stepping from mechanical wombs into hostile terrains, where survival hinged on blending into the nocturnal tapestry. A subtle sorrow lingers, the abrupt severance from the last tether to home, a plunge into autonomy that tests the spirit's mettle, evoking empathy for those who navigated such thresholds, their fortitude a cornerstone for eras unmarred by such divides. Orienting by starlight, you move toward the tree line, footsteps muffled on dew-kissed earth, the night's veil both protector and prison. The Lysander's drone fades, swallowed by distance, leaving an emptiness that mirrors the void within. Fears unspoken, resolves untested. Yet in this baptism of obscurity, a deterministic calm descends. The path ahead, a labyrinth of shadows where each choice echoes eternally. The operation's history whispers through. Flights that inserted legends like Virginia Hall, whose prosthetic leg never hindered her evasion. Their legacies woven into the fabric of resilience that spans generations, fostering quiet awe for the unyielding will that safeguards tranquility today. As you melt into the woods, branches clawing like tentative doubts, the night's embrace deepens, a cocoon where transformation brews. The flight, now a memory etched in adrenaline's ink, serves as a bridge from preparation to peril, its solitude a prelude to the symphony of subterfuge awaiting. In reflections born of this hush, a gentle irony surfaces, how descent into darkness illuminates inner strengths, a paradox that honors the era's unsung navigators, their journeys a beacon for navigating modern uncertainties with grace. The field stretches before you like a vast undulating shroud, its grasses swaying in nocturnal rhythms that mimic the uncertain cadence of breath held too long. Dew clings to your trousers, a cold seepage that mirrors the chill of exposure, now that the aircraft's rumble has dissolved into memory, leaving only the night's vast hush to envelop your form. You crouch low, the Vali's strap biting into your shoulder like a persistent accusation. Its contents, wires and crystals destined for distant ears, a burden that weighs heavier in this foreign solitude. The moon, a pale overseer, casts elongated forms across the terrain, transforming furrows into labyrinthine paths where every shadow conceals possibilities of alliance or ambush. In this liminal expanse, far from the structured confines of preparation, the true essence of your venture crystallizes. A solitary figure adrift in occupied soil, where trust emerges not from declarations, but from tentative signals etched in flame. 3 flickers pierce the gloom, torches arranged in a deliberate pattern, their flames dancing like hesitant confessions against the dark. You advance cautiously, footsteps muffled on the damp earth, each one a measured gamble in a game where hesitation invites unraveling. The maquis contact materializes from the tree line, a farmer whose silhouette blends with the rustic contours of the land, his frame weathered by seasons of toil and the subtler erosions of resistance. His eyes, sharp as flint struck in obscurity, scan you with a scrutiny born of survival's forge. Rural folk like him, drawn from the Vercors plateaus or Auvergne hills, formed the backbone of France's underground networks since 1940, evading Vichy conscriptions to wage guerrilla campaigns from hidden camps. He stands motionless, a sentinel rooted in soil that has absorbed generations of quiet defiance, his presence a reminder that occupation fractures not just borders but the very fabric of daily existence. You utter the phrase, words tumbling forth like relics from an absurd ritual. The peacock is reading an old newspaper. They hang in the air, laden with the irony of their frivolity, a code devised in distant offices to verify loyalties amid chaos. Yet here they evoke a fleeting absurdity. How the fate of nations pivots on avian whimsies, a twist that underscores the war's penchant for reducing grandeur to farce. He pauses, the moment stretching like taut wire, before responding, but it dislikes the sports section. Relief washes over you, tempered by the knowledge that such exchanges, rooted in SOE's cryptographic whims, have salvaged or doomed countless operatives, their nonsensical nature a shield against casual eavesdroppers. He nods curtly, extinguishing his light, and gestures toward a concealed path, his movements economical, as if conserving energy for the inexorable trials ahead. Together, you navigate the underbrush, branches clawing at your sleeves like grasping uncertainties. The farmer strides sure-footed on terrain he knows intimately, paths trodden since childhood, now repurposed for subversion. He speaks sparingly, his accent thick with regional inflections, recounting in hushed fragments how groups like his coalesced from draft dodgers and disillusioned souls, arming themselves with scavenged rifles to harass convoys and shelter fugitives. The maquis, named for the scrubland they haunted, embodied a grassroots rebellion, their operations swelling by 1943 into forces that tied down German divisions. Yet in these early days, their efforts were fragile sparks against an oppressive gale. You absorb his words, the night's cool breath carrying scents of loam and distant wood smoke, a sensory tapestry that grounds you in this borrowed reality, where every rustle evokes the phantom patrols that could shatter the fragile accord. At the edge of a copse, he halts, producing a bicycle from the foliage, its frame rusted like forgotten aspirations, tires patched with makeshift resolve. To the village, he mutters, mounting his steed, and you follow, the pedals creaking under your weight like reluctant admissions. The road unfurls as a narrow ribbon through slumbering fields, moonlight glazing puddles that reflect fragmented skies, each revolution of the wheels propelling you deeper into the web of pretense. Villages in occupied France, once havens of routine, now thrummed with undercurrents of surveillance, curfews enforced by jackboots, rations doled out under watchful gazes. Yet the Maquis navigated these with a stoic cunning, their networks a lifeline for agents like you, funneled through farms and bistros where loyalty simmered beneath surfaces of compliance. The first lights of the hamlet emerge, modest glows from behind shuttered windows, casting pools of amber that seem to beckon and warn in equal measure. You pedal onward, heart sinking with the rhythmic churn, when figures materialize ahead. A German patrol, their uniforms stark against the pastoral backdrop, rifles slung with casual menace. They flag you down, voices barking in clipped tones that slice the quiet, demanding papers with an authority that brooks no delay. You dismount, hands steady despite the inner tumult, producing the forged documents with a feigned nonchalance, your French, honed in simulated encounters, emerging haltingly, accented just enough to fit the guise of a provincial drifter. "Where from?" one queries, his flashlight beam probing your face like an accusatory finger, illuminating pores that betray no secrets, yet pulse with concealed alarm. You respond as rehearsed, spinning the tale of errands for a distant kin, words laced with the patois of fabricated roots, while inwardly a dark amusement stirs. How survival dangles on linguistic threads, a performance where one misplaced syllable could unravel the masquerade. The soldier scrutinizes the card, its ink bearing the weight of distant forger's precision, an artifact that has traversed channels from SOE workshops to this fraught juncture. Historically, such checkpoints ensnared many, where milice informants lurked in plain sight, yet the Maquis often evaded through intimate knowledge of backroads and timed diversions, their evasion a quiet rebellion against the machinery of control. He grunts, handing it back, waving you through with a dismissive flick, and as you remount, the bicycle's chain rattles like suppressed laughter at the narrow escape. The village envelops you, its streets narrow and cobbled, houses huddled as if sharing confidences against the occupier's ear. Your companion leads to a modest dwelling, its door creaking open to reveal a dimly lit interior where a woman nods wordlessly, her eyes harboring depths of unspoken sacrifices, wives and mothers who sheltered strangers at peril's brink, their roles in the resistance a tapestry of quiet audacity. You ascend to a loft, the air stale with hay and secrecy, collapsing onto a pallet that yields like reluctant forgiveness. The farmer departs with a murmured assurance of dawn's plans, leaving you to the night's vigil, where thoughts drift to the fragility of these bonds, alliances forged in whispers, enduring through betrayal's shadows. In the stillness, a subdued sorrow permeates, the awareness that such encounters birthed networks of defiance, Maquis cells swelling from isolated acts to coordinated strikes that diverted enemy resources, their origins in rural evasion, dodging labor drafts to Vichy factories, evolved into forces that harried supply lines, a grassroots surge that exemplified resilience's quiet power. You ponder the deterministic weave, each contact a link in history's chain, their peril a forge for liberties now taken as given, evoking empathy for those who navigated suspicion's maze, their legacies a balm for contemporary disquiets where unity feels elusive. As sleep eludes, the loft's rafters creak like burdened consciences, and you trace the valley's outline, its promise of connection a slender reed in isolation's tide. The night's depth amplifies reflections, how desperation breeds ingenuity in evasion, lessons that transcend epochs, honoring the unyielding spirit that safeguards serenity today. Dawn's first tendrils filter through cracks, heralding continuance. Yet in this pause, gratitude stirs for the untroubled breaths of now, born from yesteryear's shadowed pacts. The morning unfolds with sparse provisions, a hunk of bread, cheese veined like forgotten veins of hope, shared in silence that speaks volumes of shared jeopardy. Your guide returns, outlining routes to deeper sanctums, his instructions precise as surgical incisions, born from months of eluding patrols that comb these lands. You depart on foot, weaving through orchards where fruit hangs heavy, symbols of abundance mocked by ration's grip. The path a metaphor for the circuitous journeys of resistant souls who balanced peril with purpose. Encounters with villagers punctuate the trek, their glances a mosaic of wariness and warmth, eyes that have witnessed requisitions stripping larders bare, yet harbour flickers of solidarity. One offers water from a well, its coolness a fleeting mercy, while another averts gaze, a silent testament to fear's pervasive chill. The maquis fabric, woven from such threads, sustained agents through informal webs, their rural bases providing camouflage amid the bucolic facade, a strategy that confounded urban-focused occupiers. In these interactions, a wry undercurrent emerges, how occupation inverts hospitality, turning open doors into potential traps, a distortion that invites contemplation of how modern havens, unmarred by such inversions, owe their openness to these veiled vigilances. The day wanes, shadows lengthening like drawn-out uncertainties, leading to a safe house where rest beckons amid the scent of wood smoke and earth. You settle, the weight of the valley a constant sentinel, its latent voice a bridge to distant directives. In this repose, empathy deepens for the maquis' plight. Farmers turned fighters, their lands battlegrounds of subtlety, their endurance a quiet hymn to human fortitude that resonates across time, fostering appreciation for the unscarred landscapes of today. The hamlet folds around you like a worn quilt, its edges frayed by the relentless tug of curfew and caution, where lamplight spills sparingly from cracks in shutters, painting the cobbles in hesitant gold. You slip through an alley, the farmer's form a guiding spectre ahead, his steps measured against the night's canvas, leading to a bakery whose facade whispers of simpler eras. Flour-dusted thresholds once welcoming neighbours, now veiled in the pall of requisitioned loaves. The door yields with a sigh, ushering you into a space where warmth from dying ovens lingers like a fading embrace, the air laced with yeast and subtle char, a sensory veil that conceals the undercurrents of peril. Up a narrow staircase, creaking like suppressed confessions, you ascend to the attic, a realm of slanted beams and stacked crates, where dust motes hover in the dim glow of a single bulb, suspended like unresolved queries in the stagnant hush. The space contracts around you, walls leaning inward as if sharing confidences too heavy to bear alone. the floorboards groaning under your cautious tread. Each plank a potential informant to ears below. You set the valley down gently, its thud muffled by a threadbare rug, and survey the makeshift haven. A pallet of straw-stuffed sacks, a rickety table scarred by years of utility, and a window veiled in blackout cloth that filters moonlight into spectral slivers. The host, a widow with hands etched by labor's relentless script, nods from the doorway, her gaze a mosaic of resolve and reticence, eyes that have witnessed the slow erosion of freedoms since the armistice, when Vichy's shadow lengthened over these villages, turning bakers into reluctant guardians of fugitives. She departs wordlessly, leaving a basin of water and a wedge of coarse bread, gestures sparse yet profound, echoing the quiet solidarities that sustained networks like the Prosper Circuit, where civilians harbored wireless operators amid the Gestapo's encroaching net. Alone now, you unpack the valley with deliberate slowness, its compartments unfolding like layers of concealed intent, revealing the transceiver, a compact marvel of valves and dials engineered in British labs to bridge vast solitudes with fragile signals. You assemble it under the bulb's feeble halo, wires snaking across the table like veins pulsing with latent urgency, the antenna extended toward the rafters, disguised as a clothesline to evade casual glances. The first transmission looms, a ritual fraught with the spectre of detection, where direction-finding vans, Abwehr's roving hounds, could triangulate bursts in mere minutes, dooming operators to swift captures as occurred in early infiltrations around Paris. You key in the code, fingers hovering over the Morse paddle, the dots and dashes a cryptic poetry that conveys coordinates and confirmations, each tap resonating through the wood like a heartbeat, betraying presence. The static crackles in response, a chaotic symphony that yields to London's faint acknowledgement, words encoded in numerical veils that affirm your foothold, yet underscore the isolation's grip. Success brings no triumph, only a hollow reverberation, the signal's echo fading into the attic's confines, where the bread's crumbly texture offers scant comfort against the gnawing void. In this suspended vigil, a muted irony drifts through your thoughts. How communication, once a thread of connection, now isolates in its necessity, a solitary beacon in a sea of silence that mirrors the broader fractures of occupied life, where whispers supplanted open discourse. The Prosper network's fate lingers in memory, its wireless hubs, vital for arming Maquis bands, often compromised by infiltrated couriers, leading to cascades of arrests that thin the resistance's ranks, a historical ripple that highlights the delicate balance of trust in shadowed alliances. Days blur into a rhythm of concealment, mornings spent in the loft's dim seclusion, where sunlight filters through chinks like stolen glimpses of normalcy, illuminating the table's surface marred by your notations. You venture below sparingly, aiding in menial tasks, kneading dough that yields under your palms like reluctant secrets, the oven's heat a fleeting balm against the chill of perpetual watchfulness. The widow observes with measured warmth, her stories emerging in fragments over shared broth. Tales of sons conscripted to distant factories, villages hollowed by deportations, yet resilient through covert barters that sustained hidden mouths. These exchanges, rooted in the everyday defiance of rural France, fostered the Maquis' growth, where bakers and millers doubled as couriers, their routines a camouflage for smuggling intelligence, a subtlety that evaded the blunt instruments of occupation. Evenings demand vigilance, the radio's hum a siren call that draws you back to the attic, where you encode reports of troop movements glimpsed from afar. digits dancing across the paddle in patterns that could summon airdrops or doom. The risk amplifies with each session. The airwaves a contested ether where enemy listeners prowled, their vans circling like predators scenting vulnerability, as befell many in the French section, whose signals betrayed locations through prolonged broadcasts. You ration transmissions, timing them to evade patterns, the waiting intervals filled with the loft's creaks and distant church bells tolling like fate's metronome. In these lulls, a subtle melancholy seeps through, the irony of forging bonds through isolation, where each encoded word bridges chasms yet widens personal voids, a dynamic that invites contemplation of how contemporary connections, unhindered by such perils, owe their ease to these veiled exertions. Interactions with the widow deepen, her quiet provisions, a mended sock, a whispered warning of patrols, building a fragile accord, her resilience a mirror to the broader tapestry of civilian endurance. She speaks of pre-war harvests, fields golden under untroubled suns, now requisitioned for foreign moors, her voice laced with a resigned wit that masks deeper fissures. These moments humanize the abstract, revealing how occupation warped the mundane into acts of rebellion, much as in the Vercors, where farmers sheltered entire platoons, their homes becoming fortresses of subtlety against overt oppression. You listen, the attic's confines shrinking further, walls pressing like accumulated suspicions, fostering an empathy for her plight, a life suspended between collaboration's temptation and resistance's peril, a balance that underscores the era's moral labyrinths. You lie on the pallet, straw pricking like insistent doubts, pondering the deterministic weave that led here, from distant directives to this intimate sanctuary, where survival hinges on invisibility's art. The Prosper Circuit's unraveling haunts these hours, its operators ensnared by betrayed frequencies, their sacrifices a cautionary weave in history's cloth, evoking gratitude for eras where vigilance guards not lives but conveniences. In the darkness, a wry undercurrent stirs, how desperation alchemizes fear into focus, turning attics into arsenals of will, a transformation that honors the unyielding core within, bridging past shadows to present lights. As routines solidify, the loft becomes a microcosm of adaptation, its confines a forge for inner fortitude, where each dawn renews the pact of persistence. You calibrate the transceiver anew, dials turning with the precision of fate's adjustments, signals piercing the ether like arrows into uncertainty. The widow's occasional glance, laden with unspoken kinship, reinforces the bond. Civilians like her, pivotal in SOE's web, provided the unseen scaffolding for grander maneuvers, their quiet valor a cornerstone of liberation's architecture. Rest comes fitfully. The attics embrace a cradle of vigilance where dreams fragment like intercepted codes, leaving you to ponder the inexorable pull of this existence, a solitary thread in resistance's loom, weaving patterns that would one day unravel tyranny's grip. The historical echo resounds. Maquis havens like this sustain the flame, their anonymity a weapon sharper than steel, evoking empathy for the era's veiled warriors whose legacies illuminate the value of unyielding spirit in tranquil times. Sunlight slants through the attic's narrow slit like a reluctant informant, casting elongated forms that twist across the floorboards, each shadow a potential harbinger in the day's unfolding script. You stir from fitful rest, the pallet straw imprinting patterns on your skin like faint accusations, and descend the stairs with measured caution, the creak of wood echoing the subtle strains of coexistence in this borrowed sanctuary. The bakery below hums with subdued activity, the widow kneading dough with rhythmic insistence, her movements a ballet of normalcy that masks the undercurrents of vigilance, flour dusting the air like suspended doubts, the oven's glow a fleeting warmth against the encroaching chill of suspicion. In these mornings, the village awakens not with fanfare but with whispers, where every door's opening could unveil alliances or unravel them. A delicate equilibrium forged since the occupation's grip tightened in 1940, turning neighbors into enigmas. Venturing out becomes a calculated ritual, your steps tracing paths that skirt the main thoroughfare, where German notices flap on walls like tattered decrees from a distant throne. You procure rations at the communal depot, queuing amid villagers whose faces bear the etchings of scarcity. Eyes averted, conversations clipped to essentials, lest a stray word invite the milice's scrutiny. These collaborators, clad in berets and armbands, patrol with a familiarity that chills deeper than winter's bite, their knowledge of local rhythms a venomous edge honed since their formation in 1943 under Vichy's banner, tasked with rooting out resistors through infiltration and intimidation. You observe one from afar, his gaze sweeping the line like a scythe through wheat, and adjust your posture to embody weary indifference, a facade that conceals the pulse quickening in your veins. In this dance of deception, a quiet irony surfaces. How survival demands the art of insignificance, rendering you a ghost amid the living, a skill that echoes the broader fractures of trust in occupied lands, where friendships curdled under pressure's weight. Afternoons draw you to the cafe on the square, a hub of muted exchanges where coffee substitutes brew bitter as unspoken resentments, the air thick with tobacco haze that blurs outlines like obscured loyalties. You sit in a corner, nursing a cup that scalds your tongue, eyes scanning patrons without lingering. The shopkeeper, with his furtive glances, the young woman whose laughter rings hollow, each one a puzzle piece in the mosaic of potential betrayal. Whispers circulate of recent raids, homes upended by milice squads who dragged away suspects on flimsy pretexts, their methods a blend of coercion and local grudge, swelling their ranks to thousands by mid-war and sowing terror that rivaled the Gestapo's. You overhear fragments, a neighbor's disappearance after a careless remark, and feign disinterest, scribbling innocuous notes that mask coded observations. The pencils scratch a fragile anchor amid swelling unease. The absurdity lingers in your reflections. How caffeine's pretense sustains vigilance, a mundane ritual twisted into a lifeline, highlighting the era's inversion where solace breeds suspicion. A dynamic that invites gratitude for contemporary gatherings untainted by such veils. Evenings confine you to the loft once more, the radio's dials turning under your fingers like keys to forbidden realms, signals dispatched in bursts that pierce the ether, yet risk summoning hunters. The widow ascends occasionally, bearing scraps of news gleaned from market murmurs, troop convoys rumbling through nearby lanes, checkpoints sprouting like malignant growths. Her voice a murmur that weaves caution with camaraderie, born from losses that have hollowed her resolve without extinguishing it. These interactions, sparse as rationed sugar, forge a tenuous bond. Her stories of pre-war feasts contrast with the present's lean fare, evoking a melancholy for vanished abundances. The milice's shadow lengthens in these tales, their informers embedded like thorns in the community's flesh, leading to arrests that decimated early resistance cells around Lyon, where betrayals cascaded like dominoes in the wind. You listen, the attic's confines pressing closer, walls absorbing words like sponges swollen with dread, and ponder the deterministic weave, how alliances fray under scrutiny's glare, a fragility that underscores human connection's preciousness in unscarred times. Nights amplify the paranoia, the blackouts embrace a cocoon, where every creak below conjures phantoms, footsteps that might belong to the widow, or herald intruders drawn by rumours. You lie awake, the valley's silhouette a sentinel in the gloom, its latent hum a reminder of vulnerabilities exposed with each transmission, as befell operators in the orchestra network whose signals invited doom through intercepted waves. Sleep fragments into vignettes of evasion, dreams where faces blur into accusations, awakening you to the loft's stale air, heavy with the scent of concealed fears. In these hours, a subdued thought drifts through. How darkness, once a harbinger of rest, now breeds watchfulness, turning repose into rehearsal for flight, a reversal that evokes empathy for those who navigated such inversions, their endurance a quiet ode to the spirit's adaptability amid erosion. Routines evolve into a tapestry of deceptions, outings disguised as errands where you memorize patrols' patterns, avoiding eyes that linger too long on your fabricated gate. The village square, once a commons of chatter, now pulses with undercurrents of appraisal, where a nod from a passerby could signify solidarity or signal peril. You exchange pleasantries with the grocer, his wares diminished by requisitions, his smile a mask that conceals shared secrets or hidden animosities, a duality that mirrors the milice's insidious reach, infiltrating communities to exploit divisions sown by hardship. These encounters, laced with the risk of exposure, build a mosaic of survival's art, blending into the backdrop like ink diffused in water, a subtlety that honors the era's unsung tacticians, whose guile forge paths through oppression's maze. As weeks unfold, the paranoia settles like sediment in a still pond, clear yet ever present, shaping actions into a symphony of caution where each gesture weighs heavy with implication. The widow's quiet provisions a hidden cache of preserves, a murmured alert to heightened watches, sustain more than body, nurturing a fragile kinship amid isolation's tide. Her resilience, emblematic of civilian pillars in the resistance, who sheltered agents at grave personal cost, evokes a profound sympathy, lives suspended in ambiguity, where aid invited retribution, yet withholding meant complicity's stain. In reflections born of these veiled days, gratitude stirs for unburdened existences, where trust flows freely without the spectre of scrutiny, a legacy drawn from histories of shadowed perseverance. The cycle persists, deceptions layering like autumn leaves, each one concealing the core while exposing vulnerabilities anew. You navigate this labyrinth with growing acuity, the attic a sanctuary where plans ferment in solitude, the radio's sporadic life a thread to distant orchestrators. The milice's spectre looms, their sweeps a reminder of fragility. Yet in this navigation, a deterministic grace emerges, the human capacity to endure through subtlety, a trait that bridges epochs, fostering appreciation for the unfractured trusts of today. Moonlight seeps through the forest's canopy like spilled ink, pooling in fractured patches on the earth where you crouch, surrounded by the murmurs of pine and the faint, musky scent of moss clinging to the night. The village lies miles behind, its lights snuffed by curfew, leaving this wooded enclave as a sanctuary for whispered plots where the maquis gather like moths drawn to a clandestine flame. Two figures join you, a wiry youth named Marcel, his fingers twitching around a scavenged rifle, and Claire, a seamstress whose eyes burn with a defiance that belies her calloused hands. Their presence, raw and unpolished, mirrors the early resistance cells of 1941, when disparate souls, farmers, clerks and artisans coalesced into bands that harried German supply lines, their sabotage a quiet roar against the occupiers' might. Beneath the boughs, you unfold a crumpled map, its lines tracing a railway bridge that hums with the pulse of enemy logistics, a target poised to disrupt the machinery of conquest. The plan unfurls in hushed fragments, spoken in a patois, thick with rural cadence, each word weighed against the risk of betrayal that haunts every gathering. Marcel sketches the bridge's silhouette in the dirt, his stick carving arches that span a sluggish river, a vital artery for German munitions rolling toward the front. You produce the tools, plastic explosive, pliable as unspoken fears, and a time pencil. Its acid core a silent countdown forged in British labs to ensure precision in chaos. These implements, born from the Special Operations Executive's ingenuity, and tested in raids like those led by figures such as Philippe de Vomicourt, transform abstract intent into tangible ruin, their deployment a delicate alchemy of timing and nerve. As Claire calculates distances, her voice steady despite the rifle's awkward heft, a wry thought drifts through your mind, how the fate of armies hinges on this makeshift council, a trio of shadows plotting to fracture steel with whispers, a Chambeam nod to war's inversion, where the meek wield Havoc's pen. Preparation consumes the hours, the forest a crucible where resolve hardens under the weight of the impending action. You rehearse movements, slipping through underbrush to avoid sentries, planting charges in crevices where metal meets stone, each step a choreography of stealth practiced in distant fields now brought to life. Marcel, barely past boyhood, recounts a prior raid gone awry, his tale laced with a bitter humour. The last bomb fizzled like a bad joke, left us running from nothing but shame. His laugh, brittle as dry twigs, masks the undercurrent of dread, a sentiment echoed in the historical missteps of early Maquis strikes, where inexperience often dulled ambition's edge. You need the explosive, its texture yielding like clay under fingers that tremble not from cold, but from the gravity of intent, aware that this act, if successful, will ripple beyond the bridge, echoing through supply chains and drawing the enemy's wrath. Claire unfurls a cloth sack, revealing Kipnoan wires, their simplicity belying the devastation they promise, a legacy of SOE's Q branch that armed resistance with ingenuity's sleight. She demonstrates the pencil's mechanism, snapping the copper tube to release acid, a silent herald that will ignite in 30 minutes, a precision honed to evade detection in hurried retreats. These devices, integral to operations that crippled rail networks before D-Day, required operatives to balance haste with accuracy, a skill you now mimic under the forest's watchful gaze. As you align the components, a subtle melancholy settles, the absurdity of crafting ruin from tools so small, a microcosm of resistance where modest hands tilt vast scales, inviting reflection on how modern triumphs often stem from such unassuming origins, where quiet resolve outshines overt glory. The night deepens, stars obscured by clouds that drape the sky like a conspiratorial veil, amplifying the forest's hush, where every snap of a branch conjures phantoms of patrols. You discuss contingencies, escape routes through ravines, signals for dispersal if spotted. Each plan a thread in a tapestry of survival, woven with the Maquis' hard-earned guile from evading Vichy sweeps. Marcel points to a gully, its shadows promising concealment, while Claire murmurs of a safe house beyond the ridge, her words carrying the weight of prior escapes, a nod to the networks that sheltered hundreds despite betrayal's ever-present sting. In their planning, a deterministic rhythm emerges, each detail a stitch in a broader design that defies oppression's weight, evoking empathy for those who charted such paths, their courage a beacon for eras where safety is a given rather than a gamble. As the hour nears, you bind the charges, wrapping them in oilcloth to shield against damp, the task grounding you in the tactile certainty of purpose amid the swirl of doubt. The bridge, a looming silhouette in your mind, stands not just as steel, but as a symbol of the enemy's reach, its destruction a gesture that speaks louder than proclamations. Historical echoes resonate. Sabotage like this, from Normandy to the Loire, diverted German resources, sowing chaos that bolstered Allied advances, each act a whisper of defiance amplified into roars. Yet in your reflections, a dark amusement flickers. How a night's work, planned in whispers, could alter trajectories, a reminder of how desperation's alchemy transforms fleeting moments into lasting legacies, fostering gratitude for the unfractured landscapes of today. You rise, the trio moving as one, shadows blending into the forest's embrace, rifles slung low and explosives cradled like fragile vows. The air carries a chill that seeps into bones, a reminder of the stakes etched in every step toward the target. Claire's gaze meets yours, a fleeting accord that speaks of shared burdens, while Marcel's restless fingers betray his youth, a contrast to the gravity of intent. The Maquis spirit, raw yet resolute, embodies the era's defiance, ordinary souls wielding extraordinary impact, their efforts a quiet hymn to resilience that transcends time. As you advance, the night's weight settles, a mantle of purpose that cloaks fear, guiding you toward a bridge that spans not just a river, but the chasm between oppression and hope. In this advance, a gentle sorrow weaves through, the knowledge that success invites retribution, endangering those who harbor you. The Maquis' history, fraught with losses from betrayed plans, underscores this peril, yet their persistence, carrying on despite sweeps that claimed comrades, mirrors the human capacity to endure through subtlety. You pause, breath fogging in the cool air, and contemplate the deterministic arc. Each sabotage a spark in a broader inferno, its glow illuminating paths to liberation, a legacy that tempers modern anxieties with historical fortitude, fostering a quiet reverence for the unseen hands that shaped untroubled tomorrows. The forest exhales a damp breath, its shadows folding around you like a cloak stitched from midnight's remnants as you inch toward the railway bridge, its iron skeleton looming over the river like a sentinel of the enemy's dominion. Marcel and Claire move beside you, their forms barely discernible, each step a whisper against the leaf-strewn earth, where the scent of wet stone and pine weaves a tapestry of concealment. You clutch the wrapped charges, their weight a solemn vow pressed against your chest, the time pencil's silent promise ticking in your mind like fate's metronome, poised to unleash chaos on a structure that ferries war's sinews to distant fronts. The night is taut, stars obscured by clouds that hang low, as if conspiring to shield your intent, yet the air hums with latent peril, a reminder of the German patrols that stalk these routes, their vigilance sharpened by prior Maquis strikes that bled their supply lines since the occupation's grip tightened in 1940. You reach the bridge's base, its girders cold and unyielding under fingers that trace crevices for the explosive's embrace. Each placement a calculated defiance honed in distant training grounds, now brought to this crucible of action. Marcel keeps watch, his silhouette tense against the river's glimmer, while Claire's deft hands secure the wires. her movements precise as a seamstress threading needles through history's fabric. The special operations executives' sabotage campaigns, like those led by operatives such as Philippe de Vaumecourt, targeted such arteries to choke German logistics, each blast a ripple that delayed divisions and sowed unease, their success measured in the quiet chaos that followed. As you set the final charge, a wry flicker crosses your thoughts, how a handful of clay-like matter, molded by unlikely hands, could fracture the enemy's iron will, a twist that underscores war's penchant for elevating the humble to cataclysmic ends. Retreat comes swiftly, the trio melting into a hillside's embrace, where gnarled roots offer cover like reluctant guardians, and you crouch, breath held, as the time pencil's acid gnaws toward ignition. The river murmurs below, its currents indifferent to the impending rupture, a contrast to the pulse hammering in your ears, each second stretching like a taut string plucked by anticipation. Then the night splits, a roar that rends the silence, flame erupting in a jagged bloom that paints the sky in fleeting crimson, the bridge's frame buckling with a groan like a beast felled by unseen arrows. Shards of metal scatter, their clatter swallowed by the blast's echo, a cacophony that mirrors the historical strikes that crippled rail networks before D-Day, forcing German commanders to reroute precious resources. You watch, transfixed, as the fire dances, its glow a fleeting testament to defiance. Yet a quiet melancholy seeps in. This triumph, born of destruction, invites retribution that will shadow those left behind. The withdrawal is a blur of motion, feet slipping on dew-slick slopes as you navigate back paths known only to Marcel's rural instincts, the forest swallowing your trail like secrets buried in time. Claire's breath catches, her rifle slung awkwardly, a reminder of her novice status in this grim ballet. Yet her resolve holds firm, echoing the Maquis' raw courage that swelled from scattered acts to coordinated blows against the occupier's might. You pause at a clearing, the distant blaze casting faint warmth, and Marcel mutters, "Not bad for a night's work, eh?" His tone laced with a brittle humor that masks the weight of what follows. Tightened patrols, searches sweeping villages like scythes through ripe fields. In this fleeting pause, a subtle irony emerges. How victory tastes of ash, its sweetness soured by the cost to those who harbor you. A reflection that bridges to modern eras where triumphs often conceal unseen tolls. Dawn creeps over the horizon, its light pale and tentative, as if reluctant to illuminate the consequences of your deed. You reach a safe house, a barn nestled amid overgrown pastures, its timbers weathered like the faces of those who shield it, where a farmer offers water and a crust of bread, his eyes betraying knowledge of the night's upheaval. Whispers circulate of German reprisals, checkpoints sprouting on roads, interrogations tightening like nooses in nearby hamlets, a pattern seen in the wake of SOE's early raids, where each sabotage provoked a storm of retaliation that tested resistance networks' resilience. You sit, the bread's coarse texture a stark contrast to the fleeting elation of success, and ponder the deterministic arc. Each act of defiance a stone cast into history's stream, its ripples altering currents far beyond this moment, evoking empathy for those who bore such burdens, their sacrifices a foundation for unscarred tomorrows. Rest proves elusive, the barn's confines heavy with the scent of hay and unspoken fears, as you unpack the valise to report the strike, its dials glinting like eyes in the half-light. The transmission is brief, a coded pulse that confirms the bridge's ruin, yet the static's hiss carries a warning of heightened vigilance. as German radio vans, ever prowling, seek to trace such signals, a peril that ensnared many in the French section through intercepted bursts. You stow the set, fingers lingering on its frame, and a gentle sorrow settles. The act, though precise, binds you tighter to a web of consequences, where each victory frays the fragile threads of safety for others. This dynamic, rooted in the Maquis' costly triumphs, underscores the era's relentless calculus, defiance paid in blood, a legacy that fosters gratitude for present pieces where such stakes are relics of memory. The farmer speaks sparingly, his words laced with a resigned wit. They'll search every barn by noon, hope you're fond of hay. His jest, dry as the straw beneath you, conceals a deeper truth. The village now braces for scrutiny, its rhythm disrupted by your hand, a burden shared by those who risk all for strangers. In their quiet fortitude, a mirror to the broader resistance, you see the human spirit's capacity to endure through subtle acts, a resilience that echoes across time, reminding us how modern freedoms rest on such veiled sacrifices. As you settle into the shadows, the barn's creaks a lullaby of vigilance. You reflect on the irony of impact, how a single night's work reshapes landscapes, yet leaves the soul heavier. A testament to the era's unsung architects whose defiance sculpted paths to liberation. The air in the village has thinned, its familiar tapestry of wood smoke and baking bread now threaded with something sharp and metallic, like the ghost of a distant storm. It's a change you feel in the marrow, a subtle shift in atmospheric pressure that heralds a coming collapse. The unspoken agreements that once governed this fragile ecosystem of defiance have begun to fray, starting with a silence where a promise should have been. Antoine, the gruff farmer, whose calloused hands could fix a wagon wheel or cradle a pigeon meant for London, does not appear at the moonlit crossroads. You wait, shrouded in the long shadows of ancient oaks, as the hour bleeds into the next, the night growing heavy with the weight of his absence. In this line of work, a missed rendezvous is rarely a simple delay. It is a tremor along a fault line, a signal that the ground beneath your feet is about to give way. Returning to the bakery's attic, the scent of yeast no longer offers comfort, but feels like a hollow echo of a safety you once knew. The next day, you force yourself into the village square, a stage where you must perform the role of an unremarkable drifter. The cafe, once a listening post humming with veiled dissent, now suffocates under a blanket of tense quiet. In the corner, where old men used to grumble over checkerboards, sit two strangers. They are city men, their leather coats alien against the worn tweed of the locals, their faces impassive masks. They nurse glasses of water that never seem to diminish, their stillness a predatory art form. They are not waiting, they are watching. Under their inert gaze, the cafe's usual chatter withers, conversations shrinking to clipped transactions. A dark, quiet amusement flickers in your mind. You've spent months perfecting the art of being invisible, only to find yourself pinned by eyes that see through the facade. The whispers of history curl around you like cigarette smoke. You think of the Great Prosper Network in Paris, a sprawling organism of courage that was dismantled in 1943, not by a single dramatic blow, but through a slow, cascading rot of betrayal. A wireless operator captured, his will broken under the relentless glare of Gestapo lights. A courier seduced by promises or currency. A weak link whose fear became a weapon against his comrades. Betrayal, you reflect, is a quiet contagion, passed in hushed tones in shadowed rooms, born from the simple human desire to make the pain stop. As you stir your acrid, chicory-laced coffee, The spoon scraping against the ceramic sounds like a shovel on frozen earth. You wonder whose breaking point has finally been reached, whose silence has been bought or beaten. That night, the answer arrives, not as a whisper, but as a sound that shears through the bakery's domestic peace. A hard, flat knock on the front door. It is not the tentative tap of a neighbor, but the imperative summons of men who do not need permission to enter. Your blood runs cold. From below, you hear the widow's questioning voice, then the clipped, guttural response in German. There is no time for the valley, no time for codes or farewells. The L-pill in your pocket feels like a small, dense stone of ultimate sovereignty. By your training, drilled into your sinews in the relentless Scottish rain, screams a more primal command. Vanish. The attic window, long identified as your final exit, groans open onto the night. Cold, damp air floods in, a shock that dispels the paralysis of fear. You swing yourself onto the slanted roof, the old slats slick with mist, your boots scrabbling for a foothold in a desperate, clumsy dance. Below, the street erupts, shouts, the splintering crash of the bakery door being forced. The world has dissolved into a chaotic tableau of sound and shadow. A wry, hysterical thought surfaces. For all the talk of ungentlemanly warfare, this feels less like a battle and more like a badly staged play where the lead actor has forgotten his lines and is now simply trying to get off stage without falling. A gunshot cracks the air, a startlingly intimate sound. A tile near your head explodes, peppering your cheek with sharp, stinging fragments of clay. You don't look back. You slither across the rooftop ridge and drop into the narrow, stinking alleyway between buildings, landing with a jarring impact that shoots pain up your legs. You press your body into a recessed doorway, the damp, mossy brick a cold comfort against your hammering heart. The alley reeks of refuse and stale rain, a fitting perfume for a ghost. Flashlight beams cut frenetic, angry patterns across the cobblestones at the alley's mouth before moving on. The hunters are close, but they are blind. You remain there in the filth and the dark, long after the sounds of the raid have faded, listening to the drip of water from a rusted gutter pipe. It is the only rhythm left in a world that has just been stripped bare. The adrenaline ebbs, leaving behind an exhaustion so profound it feels like a physical weight. The net has not merely tightened, it has been drawn shut, and you are on the wrong side of it, a severed nerve ending twitching in the dark. The bakery, the widow, the entire fragile architecture of your hidden life, incinerated in moments. In eras of peace, a knock at the door is an invitation. Tonight, it was a verdict. As you melt deeper into the shadows, you understand the fundamental shift in your existence. The mission is no longer to hide in plain sight. It is not to exist at all. The alley is a wound, and the village has become a tombstone. To linger is to invite your inscription. Motion, raw and instinctive, becomes the only antidote to the paralysis seeping into your veins. You move not by design, but by the primal whisper of self-preservation, dissolving into the deeper darkness where cobbled lanes give way to earthen tracks. You become a creature of the night's underbelly, navigating by the texture of the ground under your worn soles, using hedgerows as your veins and ditches as your arteries. The moon, a merciless spotlight, forces you into the skeletal embrace of winter woods, where branches claw at your coat like the grasping fingers of the newly dead. Each snapped twig underfoot is a betrayal of the silence you crave. Each distant owl's hoot, a potential sentry's call. You are no longer an operative executing a plan. You are a rumor, a ghost haunting a land that is now actively trying to exorcise you. Dawn arrives not as a gentle awakening, but as a slow, grey dilution of the darkness. It finds you huddled in the shell of a shepherd's hut, a stone ruin listing against the skyline like a forgotten memory. The roof, a lacework of missing slate, offers a fractured view of a sky that has offered no solace. Here, in this derelict sanctuary, the adrenaline finally ebbs, and what floods the void is not relief, but a cold, heavy sediment of guilt. It is not a sharp, clean wound, but a pervasive, seeping poison. You see the baker's widow, her face a testament to quiet endurance, and you imagine the terror blooming in her eyes when the door splintered. You feel the crushing weight of her captured world, a world you inadvertently brought to ruin. The abstract lessons from the misty glens of Ariseg now return as vivid, gut-wrenching certainties. You recall the hushed lectures on Gestapo methods, the clinical descriptions of what happens in the basements of places like Frayne Prison, the relentless glare of a single bulb that burns away the very concept of time, the insidious kindness of an interrogator offering a warm drink, a moment of humanity designed only to find the crack in your resolve. You understand now, with a terrible, empathetic clarity, that betrayal is often not a choice, but the last stop on a long road of pain, the final, desperate utterance of a spirit that has been systematically hollowed out. A bitter, corrosive thought surfaces. In a world of ungentlemanly warfare, perhaps the most ungentlemanly thing of all is to be the one who gets away. But duty is a stubborn, hollow-eyed creditor. London must be warned. The network's collapse is a contagion, and you are carrying the knowledge of its spread. The valley, your heavy, cumbersome anchor to another world, is now both your only hope and your greatest liability. To transmit is to light a flare in the abyss, a signal that screams your location to the wolves. For 2 days, you remain in the hut, a prisoner of your indecision, gnawing on the last chalky remnants of your emergency rations. The physical hunger is a dull, distant ache. The gnawing silence is the true torment. Finally, under the oppressive blanket of a starless, rain-threatening night, you can wait no longer. You assemble the radio, its intricate machinery a stark anomaly in the primitive decay surrounding you. The antenna wire, strung between the skeletal branches of a dead tree, looks like a fragile thread spun to catch damnation. Your fingers, stiff with cold and trembling with dread, tap out the terse, coded plea into the ether. Network compromised, awaiting instructions. Corbeau is silent. The burst of Morse is brutally short. You strain to hear a reply through the static, every nerve ending a taut wire resonating with the night's quiet menace. And then you hear it, not the faint whisper of a reply from London, but the sharp, insistent bark of a dog from the valley below. Then another, closer. Voices. Guttural German commands carried on the wind. A patrol, a methodical sweep of the countryside closing in. Cold panic, sharp and clean as broken glass, lances through you. With frantic, fumbling haste, you dismantle the set, shoving its delicate components back into their case, your breath catching in your throat like a trapped bird. You flatten yourself behind a crumbling section of the hut's wall as flashlight beams slice through the darkness, their cones of light painting the ruins in fleeting, terrifying detail. They are close, so close you can smell the damp wool of their uniforms. You hold your breath until your lungs burn, every muscle coiled for a final, hopeless act of defiance. They pass. The voices and the barking recede into the distance, and the silence that rushes back in is more profound, more absolute than before. You remain motionless for an eternity, listening only to the frantic drumming of your own heart. The message got through. but the cost was nearly absolute. Leaving the full security of the hut, you push deeper into the wilderness, into the damp, cold heart of the French countryside. You are more alone than you have ever been, a single frayed thread in a vast, hostile tapestry. In another life, a quiet night in the country is a promise of peace. In this one, it is merely the lull between hunts. As you find shelter in the hollow of a fallen log, a damp, earthen tomb, you realize with chilling certainty that the weight of survival is sometimes far heavier than the fear of death. Time loses its shape in the wilderness. Days are measured not by the clock, but by the slow pilgrimage of the sun across a steel-grey sky. Nights are marked by the depth of the cold that seeps from the damp earth into your bones. You have become a creature of instinct, your senses honed to a razor's edge, attuned to the rustle of leaves that might be the wind or the whisper of a boot. The world has shrunk to the radius of your immediate survival. The trickle of a clear stream, the shelter of a thicket, the gnawing, hollow ache of hunger that has become your constant, unwelcome companion. The grand tapestry of the war, the strategic maps and distant battles, has faded into an abstract myth. Your war is here, in the dirt, in the cold, in the silence. After what feels like an eternity of this suspended, spectral existence, you risk another transmission. The valley, once a symbol of your purpose, now feels like a tombstone you carry on your back. You choose your moment with agonizing care during a lashing rainstorm that might mask your signal, a desperate gamble against the odds. You set up the radio with the practiced, weary movements of a priest performing a final rite, your fingers clumsy with cold but sure in their memory. You tap out your call sign, a ghost's whisper into the chaotic ether, expecting only the hiss of indifference, but then a reply, faint, fractured by static, but undeniably there. It is not a set of instructions, but a string of coded numbers, a rendezvous point, a time, a method. The message, once decoded, is brutally simple. A Lysander, a field, 3 nights from now, if the moon allows, and 2 words that land with the weight of a final judgment. Good work, withdraw. The words offer no absolution, no praise, just a cold, clinical acknowledgement of a task completed. The good work feels like a cruel jest, a bitter irony that tastes of ash in your mouth. What work? The bridge is a twisted ruin, but the network is a graveyard, its silent stones bearing the names of those you knew. Antoine, the widow, the brave, foolish boys who trusted you. The withdrawal is not a victory parade. It is an extraction, the pulling of a single soiled pawn from a board where the king has already fallen. The journey to the rendezvous point is a pilgrimage through a landscape of ghosts. You move only at night, navigating by the stars, the same stars that once guided you into this land full of treacherous hope. Now, they seem cold, distant, their light offering no warmth, only the bare illumination needed to avoid a broken ankle. You pass a sleeping village, its shuttered windows like closed eyes, and you feel a profound, aching separation. You are no longer a part of this world. You are a spectre passing through it, leaving no trace but the lingering chill of your passage. You recall the historical accounts of agents who were pulled out, survivors like yourself, who returned to a world that could never understand the weight of the silences they carried, their minds forever haunted by the faces of those left behind. They suffered from a grief that had no name, a survivor's guilt that became a phantom limb, always aching, always there. On the final night, you lie in a ditch at the edge of the designated field, the wet earth clinging to your clothes. The world is utterly still, bathed in the ethereal silver light of a full moon. It is a perfect night for a landing, and a perfect night to be seen. You wait. Every fibre of your being is a taut wire of anticipation. You are beyond fear now, suspended in a strange, calm limbo between two worlds, belonging to neither. You think of the life you left behind in London, the ledgers and the tea breaks, a life of such innocent, blissful ignorance. It feels like a story someone else lived. A wry, tired thought drifts through your mind. The radio's silence is finally merciful. No more bad news, no more compromised codes, just this profound, final quiet. Then you hear it, a faint, distant drone, a sound that is now woven into the very fabric of your soul. It grows, a steady, determined hum that separates itself from the night's soft symphony. The Lysander. It appears as a dark cruciform shape against the star-dusted sky, circling once, a bird of prey looking for a safe place to land. Then it descends, its approach impossibly steep, its engine throttled back to a near whisper. It touches down with a grace that belies its deadly purpose, rolling to a stop 100 meters from your position. The canopy slides open. This is it. The door is open. You rise from the ditch, a creature of mud and memory, and you run. You run across the moon-drenched field, your legs pumping, your lungs burning, the valley bouncing painfully on your back. You are running not just toward the plain, but away from the ghosts that will forever haunt this soil. You reach the aircraft, hoist yourself in, and the pilot, a faceless silhouette in the dark, gives a single, sharp nod. The canopy closes, sealing you in. The engine roars, and the plane surges forward, lifting you away from the earth, away from France, away from the man you were when you arrived. As you look down, the fields and forests shrink into a dark patchwork quilt below. You feel no triumph, no relief, only a vast, hollow emptiness. You have survived, but you are not the same. The war has carved something out of you, leaving a space that will never be filled. You have done your work, the ungentlemanly work of shadows and whispers. You have set a small corner of Europe ablaze, and now you are retreating into the cold darkness, leaving the embers to glow and fade behind you. As the coast of England appears on the horizon, a new kind of silence descends, the silence of a story that has ended but will never truly be over. And for the first time in what feels like a lifetime, you close your eyes and you let the drone of the engine carry you not toward danger, but toward a deep, dreamless, and profoundly weary sleep. And so, our story finds its quiet end. The drone of the Lysander's engine fades into the murmur of the night, leaving behind the ghost of a man who danced with shadows on the soil of France. From the smoke-filled rooms of London to the moonlit fields of betrayal, you have walked a path etched in courage and cloaked in silence. You have felt the weight of a secret world, the chill of a lonely watch, and the final, hollow echo of a mission complete. Now, let the weight of that journey dissolve. Feel the tension release from your shoulders. Let your breathing deepen, and allow your mind to drift away from the splintered bridges and whispered codes. You are safe now, far from the reach of the hunting patrols, cradled in the stillness of your quiet room. The story is over. Your watch has ended. If you are still awake, let a thought or a feeling drift down into the comments below. And know that as this night deepens, another story is waiting to be told. We will meet again tomorrow, at a different time, on a different shore, ready to explore another forgotten corner of the past. Until then, sleep well.